Using my sunglasses case pattern, let's make a sunglass case. This is what it will look like when you're finished. It has a snap closure, perfect for storing your glasses so that they don't fall out when they're, in your purse, in your car, wherever you want to store them. Isn't that cute? Let's get started. I'm going to just be following along with the pattern. On the last page, your pattern will print, and go ahead and cut that out. Using this pattern piece, you're going to cut 2 main fabric, 2 lining pieces, and go ahead and cut out 2 of your fusible fleece. Now I'm going to fuse the fleece to the wrong side of both of my main fabric pieces. Now we're going to attach our little faux suede fabric piece or leather piece. You can also create a piece using fabric. That's entirely up to you. I just like that it's easy to kind of have these pieces already ready. So we're going to go ahead and find the center of one of our main front fabric pieces. Place your faux leather or faux, suede fabric piece there, and sew 1/8 of an inch right on that center. And I'm going to show you how I do that. This is what it should look like. Don't forget to trim off any loose threads. Set aside this piece and grab your other remaining main fabric. We're going to flip it over to the back side, find your center, and place that little 1x1 square that you cut of fusible fleece about 1/2 inch or about 1/2 inch down. And you're going to want to fuse that in place. And as always, use your manufacturer's guide on how to fuse the fleece. Now we're going to flip your piece so that it's right side up. Find your center and mark down 1 inch. Using your seam ripper, poke through the mark that will be the center of that 1 inch down. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And if you feel like the fleece on the back is a little bit higher or lower than you want it, that is completely fine. Mine feels like it could have been a little bit higher, but it's totally okay. As long as we get the button in place, as long as it's kind of covering that surface, it won't matter at all. I order my snaps from Cam Snaps, and this is a size 20 in a really pretty pink color. Now taking your, I believe it's the female piece, we're going to put that on the front, and the flat piece will be on the back side, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now we're going to use our snap tool to put that snap in place. I'm actually just going to trim a little bit of that fleece off. You can keep it if you want. It's not going to make any difference. Now we're going to be attaching the lining, and sewing it along the curve using 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Making sure both your main fabric pieces are facing up, take the lining facing wrong side up and place it along the curved edges. Now, if you're using a printed, anything that has a print on the lining, you're going to want the print to be facing wrong side up because you want both the prints on the inside. Now I'm going to show you how to sew that in place. And I'm just going to be sewing 1/8 of an inch along that curve. This is what it should look like. And I'm just going to repeat the process for the other piece. Once again, I'm just trimming all of the, remaining thread and any little bits of fabric that are hanging over. Now that you've sewn along the curved edges, we're going to pull the lining up and away from the main fabric pieces. Pull down, matching the lining with the back of the main fabric piece. Iron in place, but make sure you don't iron that leather or faux leather. If it's a fabric, obviously you can iron over that, but try to stay away from the, if it's any kind of faux leather or leather piece, it'll just kind of mess it up. So you don't want to do that, but go ahead and iron along the curve as best that you can. This is what it should look like once you've pressed it with your iron. And I realized at this point that I put my faux leather piece on the wrong way. Make sure you do it wrong side up when you put it in place. I did it right side up. It's okay, it's going to look perfectly fine. In fact, it might even look better than intended. Now we're going to go ahead and sew a top stitch along the edge of the curve using 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to show you how I do that. This is what it will look like, and I'm just going to repeat this process for the other piece. Now we're going to go ahead and pull the lining away from the main fabric piece, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Now take your remaining fabric piece facing wrong side up and place it on top of the other one. Make sure both right sides are on the inside and match up those edges. That's going to get the best when you're sewing in place. You really want the edges to be matched up. and that's going to help to reduce in the bunching as well. I know a lot of people have a problem with the bunching on the sides, and I'm going to give you some tips to help manage that. So for this, just match up the edges, get the sides of the fabric matched up as best as you can. The lining might be slightly off, and that's completely fine. It's not going to alter the look of your case at all. Also, before you sew, I want to make sure that you know to leave about a 1.5 to 2 inch opening at that bottom of your lining. We're going to use that to flip our case right side out when we're done sewing. So you're just going to make sure you leave a little opening. Go ahead and sew around all 4 sides. What I'm going to do is sew all 4 sides. When I get to the edge, like where I pointed, of the curve, you're going to push your needle a little bit further out, closer to 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to be sewing 1/4 of an inch around until I get to the little edges of those curved areas. I'm going to show you how I do that. And then I'm going to move my needle 1/8 of an inch. And then when I'm done with that curve, I'm going to put my needle back at 1/4 of an inch and continue to sew around. And I'm going to show you as I'm doing that. And as you can see, I moved my needle slightly over to 1/8 of an inch. I'm doing a couple back stitches, and now once I'm done with that curve, I move it back to the 1/4 of an inch and continue to sew around. And once again, don't forget to leave that opening at the bottom of your lining. And you will see when I get to that curved area again, I'm going to go ahead and move my needle over to the 1/8 of an inch, just as I'm going over the curve. And then once I do that, I'm going to move my needle back to the 1/4 of an inch. As you can see, those edges have a little bit less sewing on the inside. You can see where my needle moved to the edge just a little bit and then came back in. Once again, trim off any extra thread and go ahead and trim those corners just slightly, making sure you don't cut the seams. And I'm going to go ahead and trim just a tiny bit of that main fabric bottom as well. Now using that opening, we're going to flip the case right side out. And I'm just using this handy little knitting needle. It's pretty thick, so it won't poke any holes in my corners. So it's pretty neat to have that. If you have something like that you can poke the corners out, that works really well. Otherwise, your finger can work. And don't forget, we're going to go ahead and press that opening shut and sew it about 1/8 of an inch. Now you're going to want to push that lining inside the main fabric piece, and I like to kind of poke the corners in. It makes it a lot easier when I'm pushing it inside. And I am going to use that knitting needle to assist me in getting all of that lining inside of the main fabric piece. And I'm going to kind of pull at those, edges a little bit, the corners, just to make sure they line up. Make sure there wasn't too much bunching in the process of sewing, and then I'm going to give it a nice press. And this is what it looks like once I've pressed it. Now we're just going to go ahead and attach that last side of the snap closure, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So I basically utilize that other snap side to kind of mark the center of where I want the other snap to go. And then that's what I'm going to use as my guide to make that center hole where I'm going to be attaching the snap. Really take your time with this. I unfortunately did not take my time, and I did kind of place it slightly over more than I would have liked. However, it worked out just fine. But do take your time because it makes a difference and you don't want it to look a little bit wonky. Make sure the flat side is on the outside. You want the snap side on the inside, just as I'm doing. And I believe I got that snap tool that I'm using just on Amazon, just like a simple handheld, snap tool. Now test your snap, make sure it works, and you have completed your pouch. Isn't it so cute? You can actually alter the size of this if you want. You can cut it just a little bit smaller. The pattern, you can cut it maybe 1/4 of an inch smaller. If you have some smaller, maybe eyeglasses that you want to put in there. You can even make it bigger. If you have just a really big pair of sunglasses, you can add 1/4 of an inch. So there's a lot of things that you can do to alter this, sunglasses case to make it work for you. I hope you had so much fun with this pattern. I know it's so fun and cute, and these are such a fun thing to make for somebody's birthday or a holiday, Mother's Day, even great for craft fairs. The link for this pattern will be in description. All of my patterns are in my Etsy shop, Warm Hearted Designs. Go ahead and check it out. And I hope you really had fun. I am so excited I got to finally finish this video. And I hope you make a lot of sunglasses cases. All right, thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.